Hi, here's another video showing some of the computerization I've been doing. The underlying game here, actually two games, Fire in the East and Scorched Earth from GDW from many years ago. I'm working hard on the computerization and I've just about finished it. And I thought I would demonstrate some of the things that are going on. First of all, the whole battlefield is actually ready to go. We can kind of shrink this down to a view where the hexes are quite small. You can just about play when you shrink it down to this size, but for me it's kind of too small to read and I have difficulty clicking exactly where I want to click, so I prefer to play it at what I think of as the normal size, which is about there. Shift this over here a little bit. Can even at this size, you can still use the scroll bars as usual to scroll around, or you can click on this tiny little thumbnail map over here to move to a specific area. So anyway, it's all set up and ready to go. But we're going to focus really for this demo on operations in East Prussia and Lithuania, because otherwise it would take just too long to show what's happening on the entire front. So here's a quick rundown of some of the basic commands that are available to players. And if we look up here, we'll see these things are just for the developer, just for me, adding things, testing things, informational stuff here. So we know that it's game turn 0, it's the Axis player turn, free Axis setup is going on right now. We always have the ability to hide the counters if we want to just look at the map. We can hide this panel down here anytime it's in the way, although we need that really for conducting the game. We can check out the RailNet, and this explains what the various colors mean for which side owns it, either Axis or Soviet, and whether it's a regular gauge or a broad gauge railroad. So we can look at those anytime. We have various optional rules going on, which I'm not going to edit right now. I won't even talk about editing them, but this shows you what's available in terms of optional rules here. You can look at a mini map. So instead of shrinking everything down, you can always bring this up if you want. And this is more of, I guess, icons on here more than anything else, just little squares to show you what's going on. And that's, of course, entirely optional. You don't really need that. We have here the ability to find all kinds of things. We can find different kinds of units. We can find different locations. We can find specific units by name. We can find units that are in a certain condition, such as out of supply. We can find airfields. We can find forts. We can find all kinds of things here anytime we want to do that. We can look at what I always refer to as the dead pile. So actually the replacement pool here. Nothing in it right now because we haven't started yet. We can check out the weather, and we can see what the likelihood is of different kinds of weather and the different weather zones on the map. We can check out the CRT. Of course, this also shows up when we're actually conducting combat. We can see that more easily, but we can check it out anytime we want. Same thing with the terrain effects chart, and this will probably look very familiar to anyone who's ever played any of the underlying games here. We can also check out the supply situation. I'm not going to click on that right now because that actually takes a few seconds. It generates a very extensive list showing exactly what's going on with the supply status for every single unit all over the map at any time. So all those things are possible. We'll just let that slide for the moment. We'll use those as necessary as we go along. And what we're looking at on the map, and again, we're focusing right now on East Prussia and Lithuania, more or less Army Group North, I suppose. all that other stuff is available, but we need to limit this somehow, or this will be about a 5-hour demo, and I don't think anybody wants to go that long, including me. So this is the historical setup. The core numbers don't really matter, but if we scroll over here, we mouse over, and we can see what units are here. This is as close as I could come after a lot of research to bringing in the exact historical deployment for all the units on 22 June 1941. And you can play with historical deployment, or you can use free deployment and you can switch things around. You can do Axis free setup, you can do Soviet free setup, and you can go back and forth. I've actually made a couple of minor adjustments to the Soviet setup that really just to make the demo a little more interesting. And if we go, for example, here, if we wanted to, for free setup, we could run it over here and we could stick that unit in Stalingrad, and the system will be happy to do that, although there's no particular reason to do it. We could grab these guys here. Whoops, I put everybody there, didn't I? We could grab these guys here. We could drop them down back there if we wanted to, but I think actually we'll cancel the moves for all those people and put them back where they started. But we can switch back and forth. We can go into Axis free setup, and we could take these guys and we could drop them down any place we wanted to. So free setup, free deployment is completely available. Going back and forth as much or as little as you want for both players. But we'll leave this at what really is the historical deployment, except for the couple minor adjustments that I've made just for demo purposes. And what we would normally do at this point is we would say, let's click here to begin the Axis June 2, 1941 surprise turn. And I will do that. I will click there. But I'm going to do something now that no Axis player in his right mind would actually do, and that is I'm going to skip the surprise turn. The reason I'm going to skip doing things in the surprise turn is because there are some pretty important and in some case dramatic restrictions that are in place according to the rules as written, according to the rule book. For example, there's no rail movement during the surprise turn. There's no construction. I think there's no demolition. There's a variety of things like that. So in order to have a good demonstration of what you can do here, I'm just going to skip the surprise stuff. We'll skip most of it. So I'll go ahead and give this a click. And the game always starts out, according to the rule book, with the Axis surprise air assault that happens on the June 2, 1941 surprise turn. The Axis player has a maximum right now of 165 air factors, and he can put in as many or as few as he wants into the surprise attack, which according to the rules, depending on how the system rolls the dice, could knock out a decent number of Soviet air factors or not. We'll find out. We'll launch that surprise air assault, and we get the results here. So 20 factors went in. One of the Axis air factors was eliminated, I should say, leaving 164 available, with 145 available in the surprise turn, because we did use up some of them, so they won't be able to do anything in the surprise turn, which we're going to skip anyway, so it doesn't matter. Those 20 factors, of which 19 actually got in, managed to eliminate 11 Soviet air factors. So they got a pretty good return on that. Soviet air factors remaining are 78, but none of them will be available on the surprise turn, and that's just from the rule book. That's rules as written. The Soviets won't have any air factors available at that time. So the surprise turn movement phase now begins. We'll click on that. And before we see it, we have here a reminder about all the special rules that are in effect during the surprise turn. This is why we're skipping the surprise turn, because all these special things are in effect. It just kind of limits the ability to demonstrate various things that I want to show here. So we'll close that, and it brings up the movement phase for the surprise turn, and we're just going to say in that because we're going to skip right over it. It says, do you really want to do it? Yeah, we do. Takes us now into the combat phase, and we can end the surprise turn right now. Again, it's going to check with this. It's telling us, you might want to do some of this stuff, and if you click on this, you can't go back. And we're going to say that's okay. We'll put that behind us. So now we have the June 2, 1941, the regular turn 1 Axis player turn. We can see we'll be starting with the initial phase. Weather is clear in all 3 zones on the map. Axis air factor is available 164 because we spent some in the surprise turn. Ranges, the average bombing range is 20, average fighter range is 12, and Axis rail capacity is 30 as opposed to 0, which is what it was in the surprise turn. So we'll close that, and here we go. Reinforcements. I did a big demo, a YouTube video demo of the Soviet reinforcement and replacement system the other day. This is the Axis side of the same stuff here. So we'll skip over this pretty quickly. It's showing new supply points that arrived, any new air points that arrived for the Axis player, but none did. It was 0. Conditional reinforcements. The Axis player doesn't get any conditional reinforcements at this point in the campaign, but the Axis player did get these reinforcement units. And if you look off to the left, you can see those red circles will show up if I happen to go over a place where, if I go over a unit with the mouse, the circle shows up in the hex to reveal where it appeared. We're going to just click to continue. We're not really too worried about those reinforcements right now. They're showing up on the map edge over there. And we go to special replacements. Special replacements happen when you lose units during combat or overrun. Well, we didn't do any of that in the surprise turn, so there are none. And we'll continue past that. That, by the way, is pretty much identical to the way it works for the Soviets. Replacements. Replacements are only on the 1 turn of each month. So on July 1, the Axis player will start getting replacements. So we don't have any here. There's nothing we can do. So we'll just end the replacement phase. And now we actually, after we say yes, we really want to do it, now we actually get into the movement phase and the integrated air phase that goes along with it. So here we are, June 2, regular Axis player turn. We've looked at reinforcements, special replacements. We're in the movement phase, and let's just look at the way some of this works. This is standard in all the scenarios that I have done based on all the games in the system. I have a little bit of a cough going on here, so excuse me if you hear these coughing noises in the background. If we look over here, we can mouse over any stack of units, and we can see what's in that stack. Could be one individual unit under that headquarters, or there could be multiple units under that headquarters. So it tells you all this information. If we were playing with the optional rule for limited intelligence switched on, we would not see all that detailed information about the Soviet units while we are in the Axis player turn, and vice versa. If we were in the Soviet player turn, we wouldn't see all that information about the Axis units. But while we're playing here without limited intelligence, we can see all that information. So we can mouse over anytime we want to see that stuff. If you click on an empty hex, here's a good one here. You can see we've clicked on the hex number, and Königsberg is here. GE is short for Germany, so it's part of Germany. It's owned by the Axis player right now. The terrain is, we have a partial city. It's on the coast, and there's an airfield, and there is a depot in there. So we have a depot menu, which we'll look at later. And then just to make it a little bit easier to see, we put up the icons for an airfield and a depot so that you know that's available in that particular hex. Now we can also click on a hex that has units in it. So let's just try this one, for example. And here, in addition to seeing this kind of same information that we saw on the empty hex, we see exactly what's going on with the units. And because it's the movement phase, we also have the ability to start picking those units and moving them. So let's see here. I'm actually, rather than winging this, I'm trying to work from a list of all the things I'm supposed to demonstrate here. All right, so we clicked on that headquarters hex. Let's bail out of that for the moment. So we'll just deselect, and we're sitting now back here still in the movement phase, waiting for something to happen. Let's take a look at a depot. And actually, this is probably a good hex. We'll go in here. There is a depot, so we'll check out the depot menu because my experimental rules for supply utilize depots and supply points. And we have this special menu to handle all the various things that can be done with depots and supply points. Now, I've demonstrated that in other videos, so I'm not going to go into it in very much depth at all here. But I will say that there's this long list of options that are available that simplify the player's tasks and determining both what needs to be done and how he can do those things in terms of supply for his units. So just dealing with supply doesn't take up the whole darn game. This makes it go a lot faster. For example, you might recall when we looked at the reinforcement screen for the Axis player, it showed that a whole load of new supply points were arriving this turn. In fact, as we see here, 1,741 new supply points are arriving. There is an algorithm for determining that, but I won't go into it right now. But what we want to do, because those points are not useful at all, useful or usable, until we put them in a depot. And so we're going to say, let's put some of these guys into this depot that's right here. So we'll distribute some newly arriving supply points, and it immediately marks the rail net that is in German hands, like the rules as written for supplies in Fire in the East and Scorched Earth. You can only use friendly controlled rail hexes, and it doesn't matter whether they have been broken or not by units or by bombing. So this helps you figure out the places where the rail net is functional. It shows you all the depots that are available, and we're actually working on this one right here, and it tells us that in this city, there are currently 410 supply points, and there are 36 REs currently assigned to draw supply from that depot. So let's add some more. Since we have 36 in there, this would ordinarily be kind of a good thing to do. We'll put in 72 points and we'll distribute those, and it tells us, all right, we did that successfully, and we can continue to mess around with depots as much as we want to, but for our purposes, we don't really care. Check one of my other videos if you want to know more about how that works. We're going to exit from the depot menu, returning to movement. And let's look at a couple of other things here. Since we're in a depot, one of the rule systems in Fire in the East and Scorched Earth involves allowing units to carry resource points. Now, resource points in my experimental system are to a large extent the same thing as supply points. So if you wanted to have a unit, and we'll pick one at random here, the 291st Infantry Regiment, and we'll say, let's go in here and look at the depot and supplies for that unit. We have a variety of things that we can do, including detaching this unit from this particular depot and reattaching it to a different depot, and so on and so forth. Or we can say that we want to load this unit with supplies from the depot up to a maximum of 6 because it's a 3 RE unit. So we'll say, let's give it 6. Let's load it up. It tells us we were successful in doing so. There's no particular reason really to load that guy up with supplies, but just for demonstration purposes, you can see that we expended 1 movement point, and the $ means that we have 6 supply points now loaded on that unit. I don't think there's really any sense in units carrying supply points quite this early in the game because everyone will be within supply range for a while. And in fact, one of the reasons why we skipped over the surprise turn is because of the way the supply rules work according to the rule book. In the first turns of the game, everybody's going to be in supply here no matter what. So anyway, it does show you how to carry supplies if you want to do it. So let's deselect that guy. We'll leave him with his supplies, whether he wants them or not. Let's see if we can find an interesting unit to mess with. Artillery regiment. Oh, here we go. So we have a couple of divisions here. Let's go ahead and give this a click. And we can see here that in this case, we have now received an extra option here for breaking down. And that's because the system has detected that in this hex, we have at least one unit which is capable of breaking down into its components according to the rule book, according to the rules as written. So we'll say, yeah, let's see about breaking somebody down. And it points out that both of these divisions in that hex can break down. And it will break down as follows: these 3 226 regiments plus a headquarters if supported. So we can choose, and let's say that we want unsupported, and we'll leave that SS police division out of it just for the moment, and we'll say, okay, we have now broken down that unit. Let's go back, and now when we look here, we see that this infantry division has A, B, and C, which is my way of showing that they are the components of the broken down division. Furthermore, we can see that we have not only a breakdown, we also have an assemble option here. We have the breakdown option because the police division is still capable of breaking down, and we have the assemble division because it just so happens, well, because we didn't move anybody, it just so happens that all the components to reassemble that division are available in the hex. So if we click on assemble, it says, look, you can rebuild this division with these components. Do you want to do it? And we'll say, yeah, we'll go ahead and assemble that. There's nobody else who can assemble. We'll go back here to movement, and now we have the divisions back together. So according to the rule book, according to rules as written, I believe that the current status is that breaking down can only happen at the beginning of the movement phase or the beginning of the exploitation phase. In all the years that I've played the game, I don't think I have ever seen anybody abide by those rules. I think everybody breaks down and assembles units at any time during movement and exploitation, despite what the rule says, because otherwise you just have to spend forever planning out your turn in the first place before you actually move anybody. In case you decide that you do want to break somebody down, you have to do it at the proper time. And I decided, well, the heck with that. I'm just going to let people break down and assemble at any point during the movement phase and the exploitation phase if they care to do so. So that is not quite a rules as written way of breaking down and assembling, although it really does ultimately work the same way as I think most people play the game, despite what the rules say. All right, so what's going on here? Let's take a look at some various things that we can do here. There's probably no reason in the world to do this, but why we have this guy selected just to show, we'll take a look at CRD, and this is basically our engineering stuff. This is construction, repair, and demolition, and we'll give that a click. And we'll see the options available here. We could reduce port capacity. Well, there's no port in this hex. We could destroy an airfield. There is no airfield in the hex. Or we could break the rail line, which requires 2 MPs. So we'll say, yep, let's go ahead and break the rail line. Now, why I would break the rail line, with the German unit in Germany at this point, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But it just does give you an idea of what's possible. That cost 2 MPs, so out of the 6, he's now expended 2. And yes, I know that was a silly thing to do, but just to demonstrate how it works. Other engineering things. If we go into this hex here, we can take a look at an actual construction regiment. They have a few more options because they can build and repair things. So in addition to the demolition stuff that we just saw, they could repair damaged ports, they could repair rail breaks, but there are none in this particular hex. But they could build things. They could build a fort or an airfield. Now, I don't know that we really need an airfield here, but let's say we want to build an airfield. And it says, okay, you just started construction of the airfield with this unit, and it will be ready on the July 1, 1941 turn. And if we look back here now at the construction regiment, it has, by the way, turned this orange to indicate it's doing something. So orange is kind of a warning, because if, for example, let's leave these two out of it for a moment. If, for example, we were to take this construction regiment and move it over here, it'd say, well, wait a minute, your construction project just got canceled because this guy didn't stay in the hex. He moved there. And if I were to say, well, oops, I'm going to cancel that move, and I'm going to go back here, and I want to go back in, and I can say, yes, I really do want to build that airfield, and I'll try really hard to remember not to move him next time. So you don't have to abide by the fact that you've started to build that airfield. If you do something else that would prevent construction, it will remind you about it, though. Sorry about the coughing. All right, so let's look at some movement stuff, I think, is where we are here. We looked at this, we looked at that, we looked here. Yeah, so what this phase really is mostly about is moving, plus the integrated air phase. And there are all different kinds of moving here. And if, for example, we were to start, let's grab this, and let's say none, and we'll take just this infantry division, and let's say we want to strat rail it. So we could say that we want to move it to, how about here? And because it's strat rail, we have, umpteen hexes, or the 200 hexes or 1,000,000 hexes or whatever it is. So it's no problem. We could strat rail using strategic rail movement. It just moved down there. Now we could take another unit, and let's see, what do we have somebody here? Yeah, we have a security division here. Maybe we want to do operational rail movement. That's a little bit different. And if you watch right in this area, right in here, you're going to see that it'll start to change a little bit as we go along. So if we go here, notice it took 1 MP to entrain, and now that ends up being, what, about 1/10 of an MP each time it moves along there. Now we can go back over here to this guy. He did the strat rail, right? And if we said we wanted to do something else with him, like let's go here and say, well, you can't do that. And the reason is because if you use strategic rail movement, you can't combine it with other kinds of movement. So it's going to prevent you from doing construction, demolition, repair. It's going to prevent you from moving in any other way. You could cancel that move if you wanted to, start all over again and do it, but we won't mess with that. Let's see, another kind of movement here is, we go over here with this artillery unit, and let's say admin movement. So again, if you watch in here, you'll see that that took a 1/2 an MP, 1/2 an MP, 1/2 an MP, 1/2 an MP, 1/2 an MP. So you can go quite a bit faster if you follow the rules for admin movement. According to the rule book, rules is written, there's some things you can't do. For example, you can't move next to an enemy unit. It has to be a friendly hex. There's certain restrictions on it. But as long as you follow those restrictions, and remember, the system is going to enforce it. If you forget, the system's not going to forget. If you try to do something that's not allowed, the system will stop you from doing it. So as long as you follow the rules, you can use your admin movement, your operational rail movement, and your strategic rail movement. although I should point out, let's click one more thing over here. If we come over here, rail cap is now down to 24 REs because we have expended rail capacity to move the one unit by strategic rail and the other unit by operation rail. So the system keeps track of that, and eventually if you keep doing a lot of rail movement, you will run out, and that will be the end of the line, so to speak. Okay, so we've done some loading, some breaking down, we've done that, and I think now it's time to actually start thinking about heading toward Leningrad, now that I've demonstrated some of these things. So we're in the movement phase. All that stuff has been happening in the movement phase, and most of it didn't make much sense at all, but it was useful for demo purposes. So let's think about moving, and before we start moving, I think there's at least one more thing we should do, and let's start to get an idea of friendly attack strengths and enemy defense strengths. So just to get an idea of what's going on along the front here, we can look at this anytime we want during the movement phase and during the combat phase, and I think also during the exploitation phase. And this just saves time, because note that if I were to mouse over here, it's going to tell me the same thing. If I mouse over here, it's going to do all the math for me and show me that I have 29 attack factors there, and it's going to show me that I have a total of 4 defense factors there. But this just lets me get an overview of what's going on. And as the Axis player, you're probably already excited. You probably already noticed, you're already drooling over the fact that this whole stretch of line is held by nothing more than 1 defense factor here and 1 defense factor here. Now, I have to confess that I set that up artificially just for the demo. It's not really going to be weak. Historically, there's some other units in there. So what we're going to do now wouldn't actually be able to happen unless, as I did, you use free deployment to move some units around and to make this weak point in the line. So let's do the first movement that we do is going to be an overrun. And so we're going to take these guys here, and if we look up here, it already did the math for us. We have 26 attack, 24 defense, and the X at the end there, meaning that we have various movement factors going on in this stack. So I think 26 should be ample. Let's see what happens if we try to move into here, and it says, well, you're trying to move into an enemy-occupied hex, so you must be attempting an overrun. If you want to do that, the odds are going to be 52 to 1. So you can cancel it if for any reason you're not happy with that. Maybe you even clicked on the wrong hex, who knows. You can cancel it if you want, or you can attempt to conduct an overrun. I think at 52 to 1 we will probably have success. So let's give that a shot. You notice that over here it pops up this diagnostic window. Nothing that you really need to think about too much. I still have those turned on because I like to look at them just to make sure that all the numbers are working out as they should. You know, who gets halved, who's in supply, you know, who's crossing a river, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is detailed in there, but we'll close that because what we really care about is the overrun succeeded at odds of 12 to 1 or greater, and the overrunning units moved in there, and they can continue moving as usual. And note that we see that cost a total of 3 MPs expended for the infantry divisions, 2 for the combat motorized flak, and so forth. So you can keep track of that. And let's see if we can continue into there. Well, not all the units have sufficient MPs because, of course, there are different costs, whether you're combat motorized or not, for German units, and they have different movement factors. But if we look at this, we'll see some of our guys got in there and some of our guys didn't, and that's okay. Let's take a look up here now. Let's see about here. Let's attempt an overrun at 56 to 1, and if we do that, we get our diagnostic again, which I'll just get rid of, and we can see that we were indeed successful. But you can notice in the red that because we were moving directly from one enemy zone of control to another enemy zone of control, this cost more than that other overrun. And most of our units, except for the combat motorized here, the assault gun battalion, most of our units expended all of their movement factors to make that overrun. So we'll just say, okay, that's far enough for those guys, and they're done. Now we'll just continue with some ordinary movement kinds of things, and I am not going to try to optimize this move at all. And I'll just say, let's take these guys and run up here. You know, that looks like a pretty good thing to do. By the way, let's think about some air operations, because this is integrated. Air is available on call anytime you want it. And let's just say we want to conduct some bombing here. And when we click on that hex, that's an enemy hex. We can see what's in the hex, and we also now have the option to conduct an air mission. And here we go. I've demonstrated this before, so we'll go pretty quickly here. So just for the heck of it, I'm not sure this is a really good idea. I'll send in 12 Axis air factors. I will bomb individually rather than adding those together into one single 12-factor attack. For enemy interceptors coming into this mission, the maximum available would be 78. There's also, see this little X here, I like to do this sometimes just to sort of randomize what's going on. If I put an X in there, that's just my way of saying, tell the system to decide how many interceptors to send. You know, if you're actually playing against somebody, you don't want to do that. But because he will want to decide for himself how many interceptors to send. But if you're playing solitaire, or if you're just testing some things out, putting an X in there can be useful. Now, what are we going to bomb in this X? What's available? Well, there's a railroad there, so we could bomb that. There is no rail marshaling yard. There's no airfield. There is a depot. There's no factory, no port. Or we could put harassment factors into this hex. But let's attack the depot, and the depot has supply points in there. For each hit that we can deliver onto that depot, that will destroy one supply point. Now, I'm not suggesting this is actually a very effective use of air power, but for the demonstration purposes, I think it's worthwhile. So let's do that. We're sending in 12 air factors. We're letting the system decide how many interceptors to put up. We're going to attack the depot, and let's click here to resolve the air mission. Oh, well, they sent in 15, and based on the effectiveness of the Soviet interceptors at this stage of the war, 5 of them actually arrived over the target area at the right time to intercept the bombing mission. That's not a very good number. That number changes as the campaign goes on. Now, I basically made up those numbers based on what I think seemed to be the historical trend. At the beginning of the war, Soviet interceptors weren't very effective at all. They didn't necessarily get to where they were vectored. Later, they get a lot better, but right now, not very effective. So 5 interceptors arrived. They fired. They scored 0 hits. The Axis bombing mission fired back with 12 points and scored 4 hits on the Soviet interceptors. There was no AA fire in the hex. Bombing factors delivered to the target. 12. Target depot not hit. Okay, that was incredibly bad rolling. That was terrible rolling. We should have gotten at least 1 hit, and each hit would have knocked out 1 supply point, but we'll have to live with that. We didn't get any hits there. If we wanted to, we could continue to bomb, whether we bomb the depot again, or whether we try to knock out the railroad, or whether we want to put harassment factors in the hex. But let's say that's enough of that. We will exit out of the air menu, get back to the regular part of the movement phase. So what else have we got going on here? Let's bring this guy into here. Let's bring this guy into here. Let's bring this guy up here. And let's kick him into here. Let's send all of these guys up to here, and I might change my mind. I say no. Let's go back one. I really didn't want to do that. Let's just send part of them up there. So let's choose. We'll take this one, and we'll take this one, and we'll take these two combat motorized units, and we'll just take the ones that are selected and move them into here. And of course, you know, I can move all the Axis units from here all the way down to the Black Sea, but I think this probably gives a pretty good idea of how it works. You know, we've looked at strat rail, we've looked at operational rail, we've looked at admin movement. You've seen how units can move, and they pay MPs just like they do according to the rule book if they run into woods or forests, or if they're crossing rivers or whatever. So we'll call that good, and we figure everybody is in a decent position by now. And let's just see if there's anything else I need to show before we get out of this. We showed that, we showed that, we showed that, we showed some more movement. I think that's pretty good. So let's end the movement phase. And it's warning us. It says, okay, you really want to do this because you can't go back. If you say, oh, I forgot to move that guy, well, yeah, you can't do that. So we say we're all done, and now it comes to the combat phase. It shows us the combat results table to keep that in mind. We didn't do any planning of attacks. I did a whole video about that a while back, so if you're interested in the feature that allows you to plan attacks in the movement phase so you don't have to remember them when the combat phase comes along, you can take a look at that video. But I didn't do any of those here. So let's just get going on the combat phase, and obviously we got some people who we should be attacking. And I don't know if these attacks are going to be any good or not, but we'll find out. And let's start by saying we're going to attack this guy, and let's just see what happens if we attack from here. We'll initiate the attack, and we look at this, and it's a 2.4 to 1 with no die mods. Now it says estimate because things can shift depending on exactly how this looks at the moment of combat. Notice, by the way, that because everybody is in supply during the Axis June 2, 1941 turn, most of the supply stuff over here is not available to change because you're going to be in supply no matter what. You don't have to worry about it. All right, those aren't great odds, and we have no die mod. So let's just see. We've got 12 here. Let's just pump in about 24 air factors. It recalculates 4.8 to 1. Keep in mind that the system is going to now allow an 8 out of 10 chances to bump this up to 5 to 1. So maybe it'll make 5 to 1, or maybe it'll end up at 4 to 1. Let's resolve the combat. And when we do that, again, we see this long diagnostic that shows every single thing that was happening here, what the results were, and yada yada. So if you want to look through that and see what happened, you know, there was some AA fire. You can look at all that stuff and see how this was determined, or you can just look here and say it ended up being a 5 to 1. We rolled a 6. The modified roll was a 6. The combat result is a DE, defender eliminated. And now we get to choose who do we want to advance, and we could say all of them or none of them. We'll actually take them all. We want them to advance. So here we go. Let's attack here. We'll go here with these guys. We'll initiate this. We got a 2.8 to 1 with a -1 on that. So let's pump in some more air power. You know, I'm just sending in air power because I don't really need to save it for anything. So we'll send in some air power. There's that diagnostic again, which we'll send away. We got a 5 to 1, but we only rolled a 1, modified to a 0. We got an exchange out of that. So some of these Soviet units survived, and now they'll need to retreat someplace, so we'll pick that. So this is the one that was attacked. The other red dots mean you better not go there because they're enemy zones of control. So we'll go here, and now we will say we want these guys to advance into here. Let's attack this one from here. Initiate 2.8. These odds are not really great this time around. Let's see what we can do in here. We'll just dump in a bunch of air power, and we will resolve that combat. We won't even bother to look at the diagnostics. Oh, we got a defender retreat. Not all that good. Now, in this case, the Axis player has the Soviet units surrounded. So it's saying if you have no legal retreat option, you can click here and it's going to delete the headquarters. And if you say, well, I don't believe that, I'm going to try and get out of here anyway, you know, you can pick a hex and say, oh, I want to retreat to here. And it's going to say, oh, eliminated, 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 eliminated. All those units were eliminated because they tried to retreat through an enemy zone of control, just as the rule book explains to you. And we'll do an advance here. We've got another attack going on here. In this case, we'll give it these three. This should be pretty good attack. We initiate 15-1 plus 3. If I unclick over here, by the way, that'll get rid of that diagnostic that we don't care about right now. We'll resolve the combat. Tells it was a 9-1. Rolled a 5 with a plus 3, got an 8. Defender eliminated. They're all gone. There were no cadres even to survive there. So who's going to advance? Well, we'll choose. And we have a bunch of guys who can advance in this case. And we'll say we don't really want the 70th to advance, and we don't really want the 1st to advance. And I could mix and match. I could say, oh, yeah, go ahead and send that one in too if I wanted. We'll say those guys go in. And then let's do this one here. So here we're going to have an attack from 4 sides. I consider this a pincer attack according to one of my optional rules, which happens to be selected. I'm using the optional rule on pincer attack. So when we say initiate this, it's pointing out, oh, this is a flank, rear, or surrounded attack, meaning a pincer attack. So if you attack an enemy unit from 4 or more adjacent hexes, then he's probably going to be in more trouble than usual. And so that means it's going to reduce the factors on those defending units because of the pincer attack. So what we end up getting here is a 10-1 with a plus 3. We don't care about the diagnostic. Oh, by the way, we do have some defensive air support available here. Let's just throw that in. We'll throw an X in there and see what happens. So it's still estimating. We don't know exactly what's going to show up for defensive air support. I won't bother to put in any ground support here. We'll resolve that. And this, by the way, is because it's in range of defensive air support. I think those others must not have been in range. Either that or I just failed to notice that it was available. But anyway, defensive air support going in here. We'll resolve combat. And we got a 4-1. We rolled a 3 with a plus 3. Ended up being a 6. So defender eliminated. Choose for the retreat. So there's a cadre in here, but if he tries to retreat in here, he's going to be eliminated due to Zox. And who's going to advance? You know, I don't care. I'm just going to say nobody's going to advance just for the heck of it. So I could do some more attacks, and again, I could do my attacking all the way down to the Black Sea here, but really I'm just limiting it to this area for demo purposes, and I think that probably shows enough of what's happening, of the interface and the way that the underlying code recreates the rule book. Well, with the exception of a few modifications, mostly minor modifications that I've made just because that's the way I prefer to play the game, but it actually very closely recreates what the rule book says to do. So let's end the combat phase. You really want to do that because once you end it, you can't go back and make any more attacks, and we'll say that's okay. Thinks about it for a moment. It takes us to the exploitation phase. So in exploitation, and if we click up here, for example, the units that are not combat motorized can't even move. So we'll just take these guys here. We've got some guys in here. Oh, right. So we've got the Totenkopf. We've got something. We could move them if we wanted to. We could take this. The construction regiment is going to be left behind. You know, we could move these guys here, here, here. They could go up to there. We've got some more combat motorized units kicking around here somewhere. These guys could move anyway. So we could continue moving. If we found anybody who was weak enough, and we can go up here and find out, show enemy defense strength. If we saw anybody weak enough, like right here, there's a single factor in that hex. Let's just get rid of those little tags there and see. I think Totenkopf, he can probably handle that. Is that a rifle cadre? It's supported. What do we got in here? I don't know we quite have enough here. Let's see if we can put something together just for the heck of it. Let's take these and we'll stop that here. We'll add, oh good, we got some stuff here. We'll add, we'll merge those together, and then we will attempt to overrun. And now we've got a 16-1. We'll conduct the overrun. And that just indicates, in case you're wondering, some of these guys came from different places, so the cost is going to be different. We don't care about that diagnostic. And there we go. We'll end that. So that's probably enough exploitation. I think we've caused enough damage to the Soviet defenses for the time being. At this point, we would be able to end the player turn, and it takes us into, it reminds us, are you sure you want to do that? Yep, we are sure. We'll go in here. And it's going to take us now into the June 2, 1941 Soviet turn. And it gets right into the factories, reinforcements, replacements, all the initial phase, replacement phase kinds of things, which I just did a video on this a week or two ago. So I'm not going to bother to go into it again. Instead, I'm going to say, I hope this gave you a good idea of the way my computerized system works. This is about, what, my 12th, 13th, 14th computerized scenario that I've done with the underlying Europa game system. Fire in the East, Scorched Earth, by far the biggest one, a daunting challenge. But for me, I'm pretty happy with it. And I hope that when you see this demo, you're nodding and you're saying, yeah, this looks pretty good. If you were to take Fire in the East, Scorched Earth, turn it into a computerized game, and pretty much as closely as possible, make it work like the game works with cardboard and paper, I think this is basically it. You know, back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, when we used to talk about how can we do this, I think this is what we were talking about. Anyway, I'm happy with it. I hope you enjoyed the demo, and I'll probably have some more stuff coming up in the not too distant future. Thanks for taking a look, and enjoy your Europa gaming. Take care. Bye-bye.